This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and each week I'm joined by a panel of guests to discuss all things fandom and pop culture, primarily from a female perspective. You'll find everything from fanfic to cosplay to Schitt's Creek to Supernatural and everything in between. So put on your favorite piece of fandom merch, set aside that fanfic that you're writing about your OTP, and sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Pop Culture and Fandom News. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and this week on Friday, we are kicking off our celebration of Pride Month with a list of, we're going to be listing off some of our essential LGBTQIA+ songs, and we'll also be mentioning ones that our listeners provided, and also to let you know, I'm going to be creating a public playlist to be available on Spotify as well. So that should be a ton of fun and a fun way to kick off the month. And I'm also very excited because joining me this week, it's their first time on a regular episode. We have been on episodes together of doing the thing for ZARD Radio. Ashleigh was part of our marathon streaming event. So from ZARD Radio, Ashleigh. Hi, Ashleigh.
Hi, Erin. Thanks for having me on. Yes, your listeners may recall I absolutely beefed your quiz. Pop culture quiz, but I'm back to redeem myself a little bit by talking about things that I can't get wrong because it's subjective this time.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't get these things wrong. So I'm very excited to have you on this week. So thank you so much for joining. And at the end of the show, I'll give you time to let everybody know where they can listen to you and listen to your show on ZARD Radio. But first, we're going to kick off with some pop culture and fandom news. And Ashleigh, what is one thing in fandom or pop culture that you're into right now?
So I was sort of having to think about what might be interesting to talk about. And I'm not sure what the broad swath of your listeners who might be watching this is, but WWE, which is something that I got back into about a year ago. It's the run-up to Money in the Bank at the minute. And the way the storylines are building, it's a little controversial. Not everybody is super pleased with it. But I'm just hooked enough that I am excited for the next pay-per-view. I will watch it. More convenience on Netflix. You don't need to get a separate subscription or anything. But that is something that I'm currently into. You know, I watch Netflix on Raw when it comes out, not when it comes out, because it's American times, and that's silly o'clock in the morning for me. But I have been staying up and watching the pay-per-views when those happen, and that goes on till like 4 a.m. So it's a bit of a commitment.
I think this is the first time this has been mentioned on the podcast.
Really?
So yay. Yeah, I do. I think so. I don't know if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is the first time we've had WWE mentioned.
See, it's interesting because I'm not like a big wrestling person, really. There's friends of mine who watch all the different promotions. They watch all the indie stuff. They're very into it. But it's very theater kid. And I do get a sort of a vibe from some the episodes I've been on that this is a bit of a theater kid podcast, which is no bad thing. Indeed. So it's a surprising amount of overlap because it's pageantry. There's just so much pageantry involved, which is kind of why I like it. You know, you watch some people hit each other, sure, but it's really all about the bits in between. You know, the promos, the outfits, the intros, the heightenedness of it. You know, it's like a soap opera.
That is true. I know when I was little, I used to watch the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, which of course they made the fantastic show that we still deserve the last season, Glow on Netflix. And it's very much theatrical. And it's true, a lot of our panelists are theater geeks. And, you know, a lot of people used to be in theater and do theater, myself included. So it is interesting that it hasn't been mentioned before because I do think people kind of lose sight of that part of it, that it is a performance as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what are you into at the minute?
Well, thank you for asking. That's the first time, I want to say really quickly, that's the first time anyone's like done it where I don't just go ahead and mention mine. So I kind of like that. Maybe I'm going to implement that and make the last person ask me. So right now, and I was trying to decide, but I'm going to go ahead and mention, of course, listeners may know Mission Impossible is my favorite action franchise. And I understand Tom Cruise is, Tom Cruise. And there are issues galore with him and everything like that. But I still love these movies. I still enjoy watching Tom Cruise in them. I went and saw with frequent panelist Sasha, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. And it was fun. It's not one of my favorites at all in the series, but I had a lot of fun watching it and some of the stunts. I wish there had been more mask work. There's not as much mask work in this one. But of course, watching Tom Cruise do these things that he really did, it's just so mind-blowing to me. And I mean, I'm sure it's fun, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, there's commitment to your job, and then there's commitment to your job. And this goes beyond that. And I know he is such a lover of the medium of film, and he wants to save film. And I do appreciate that, and I do think that is genuine. And I do think giving people a theatrical experience that is enhanced if you actually see it in the theater is important and can help save that, because movie theaters are hurting so bad right now, and that industry is hurting in general. So I appreciate that a lot. The movie is a little bit too long, though, I will say. It's 3 hours long. Or Sasha's like, I thought you said this was just a little bit over 2.5 hours long. That was 3 hours long.
It's one of those things when you do any kind of writing. My experience is mostly academic writing, but I've been told the same thing by people that do creative or fiction or people like authors. Editors force you to cut it down. You kill your darlings, because if you're given too much free reign, you get a little bit bloated, get a little bit too long. Sometimes brevity is the soul of wit. Did it really need to be 3 hours long, or could it have been a crisp 2 hours, which even then is pretty long for a movie?
Yeah, and I know nowadays people really don't like movies to be that long, even though, you find a lot of Marvel movies have been like close to that long. It's like kind of this mixed bag where I think some people are trying to pull away from that length, but then some people are kind of like, whatever, if we have to spend 3 hours to tell a story, we will spend 3 hours to tell a story. Like The Brutalist last year was over 3 hours. But I do think it's interesting that they did a break in the theater where you got to actually have like an intermission. I think that's a cool idea if you're going to continue to do this. Yeah, it's like editors are the mastermind in film, and they can make or break a film. They can enhance a performance, make a performance look better. They could even do the exact opposite of that. And so I wonder if it was just wanting to stick to the script, because of course, when you're writing a script, it's the same thing. Kill your darlings, kill your babies, kill your favorites. They always say that. If you have a scene in there that you're really precious about, you might want to take it out, because there might be a reason. It might not be helping the story. And I don't know if the editors in this were just like, this is the last one, supposedly. So we are just going to give them everything we possibly can. And that could have been why. But that's a big criticism I'm hearing of this one. And also the other criticism is people are like, this is too somber or too depressing in the beginning. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think it kind of falls in line with all the Mission Impossible movies, where they are a little self-serious at times. And this one, of course, deals with AI, and it kind of wraps everything where it's like wrapping, like even pulling in things from the very first Mission Impossible, which was like almost 30 years ago, 1996. And that just blows my mind. And it also makes me feel very old, because that's how long I've been liking these movies. So
I don't want to inflict the psychic damage. 1996 is 1 year before I was born.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But you are right, though. The somberness at the beginning, like if you look at the first one, which is one of my favorite Mission Impossibles, to be honest, because it's just such a classic film of its type, the first time they did all that stuff. Other than the Mission Impossible series, which I've never watched, the TV series before. The first half of that film is very somber. Like it's not an uplifting first half. Get you in the back half with the train, he's on the top of it, all that stuff. But that bit at the beginning with the embassy, it's not very uplifting.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel that's the way a lot of those movies are in the series. And I've never seen a Fast and Furious movie, so I'm just kind of throwing that out there. But it's not like, I think from people that I know that love it, that to me sounds like it's kind of just frivolous fun, which there's nothing wrong with. And I think with Mission Impossible, it tries to elevate it a little bit, which I sometimes hate using that word, but I think that's what they're doing. So I think that's why sometimes it's so serious in the beginning. So I don't know why people think this one's more serious than the others, but I didn't. Maybe because of the subject matter, because, yeah, AI is a very scary thing, and they talk a lot about it in the movie. And then I heard people say that's a lame villain to have, and I'm like, well, it kind of is a villain we have right now, so it's
imitating
realistic.
life. Yeah.
Exactly.
If it's lame in the movie, maybe we should be thinking about, oh, well, wouldn't it be so lame if that happened? Yeah, I guess it would be. I should probably take that on board.
Yes, good point. Good point. Okay, well, we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about one thing in pop culture or fandom that we are excited about, maybe upset about, etc. So we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want is a great feeling. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can choose to bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Okay, so Ashleigh, what is one thing in pop culture or fandom that you're excited, upset about?
So, excited. I am excited for the movie, is it Weapons? By Zach
Yes.
Cregger. And I'm excited about this, not so much because, like, Zach Cregger is really funny. We were talking, I think, last time we spoke about people who we saw in things. Josh Rubin, that was it. And how he's gone from being, like a comedic actor in little skits to much more sort of, not serious, but, heightened work. Zach Cregger is the same for me. He first entered my life when I was a very, young teenager watching clips of his show, The Whitest Kids You Know, on YouTube. Just these really silly, it was a show that they had on TV, really silly comedy skits that just lived in my brain forever. And now to see him doing serious directorial work on horror films. Just that teaser trailer was so good with how much silence they used, which for a film where the sort of premise is that the thing happens at night, it's very potent to leave so much to the imagination. In that teaser trailer, they dropped the actual trailer for it. So I think the basic premise of the movie is it's a small town in America where at 2:17 a.m., all of the children in one class of a local school just walk out the front doors of their house and into the night. And they are not seen of. They're all missing. And it's about that happening. Why did it happen? The hysteria that the town kind of collapses into. Some people are saying it might be like a modern day Pied Piper kind of a thing. Some people are saying it's about like gun violence in America, hence the name of the film. This is all speculation at this point, but it's just such an interesting turnaround for this guy who I just know as this silly like comic actor to be like, oh, he's directing films now and they look really good. So I am super excited for that when it comes out.
Me too. Yeah, I mentioned this a few weeks ago on the podcast, and I love this trailer because it doesn't give everything away. And I think that works so well. Like it really worked well with his film Barbarian because nobody knew really what to expect with that film. And that film, and I still don't want to give away the twist, but that film has a twist in it that you really don't see coming from the trailer. The trailer makes it seem like it's going to be one type of movie, and then it turns into a totally different type of movie. And it plays with your expectations on certain actors and certain characters. And I just loved that. I think that movie is one of the best horror movies to come out in the last decade or so. And a lot of that is because of the way it was handled. And it was really hard for him to get that movie made because everybody's like, you can't do this. You can't like totally switch everything in the middle of the movie. You can't do that to people. And he proved you can. And I'm hoping with Weapons, not that he does the same formula, because I don't want him to go down that M. Night Shyamalan where you're always expecting that.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that there's no trailer released that gives away more than this one, because I'd like to go in as blind as possible. And I really hope people on the internet try and refrain from spoiling it for as long as possible, because that was one of the great things about Barbarian is somehow collectively everybody decided we aren't going to spoil this movie, and people stuck to it, which you very rarely see that. So I'm hoping it's the same with this. And I think he is a great addition to the horror landscape. He produced the movie earlier this year, Companion. And that was a really fun movie. But that was one where the second trailer gave away what the whole premise of the movie was. And that was kind of annoying to me. So I'm hoping Weapons doesn't end up releasing a different, more in-depth trailer, for lack of a better word there. But yeah, it is interesting when you watch people like, I mean, Jordan Peele is another example of that too.
Classic example.
And going from that genre into horror. But I do think, and you can go back and listen to my interview with Josh Rubin, and we talked about comedy and horror and how they play so well together. And so I do think it makes sense that people that are in that genre at first go over to horror, because there is kind of a really symbiotic relationship between the two genres. And, you know, a lot of horror movies, when you combine the comedy in there, it's like a release when you have all that tension. Josh describes it really well in that interview, because I asked him about that. And I'm not recalling his words because this was a long time ago. But do go back and listen to that. And he does describe why it works so well and why comedy goes really well with horror. So
it's an interesting sort of like way that it goes in terms of those transitions as well, and making that and sticking the landing, and then, you know, it's a nice little surprise. Pleasant.
Yeah, it is. Very much so. Well, this is something I'm excited and also really annoyed about. So it's a mixture.
Great combination.
Yeah. And I, of course, already went off on Dexter Original Sin and how I was so annoyed that at first I was like, oh, this show's so, I don't like it. And then it got me and I ended up being hooked. And I was really annoyed by that because I don't like that they're making it a franchise, but yet I keep watching it. Well, they released the trailer for Dexter Resurrection, which is the new Dexter series. And Dexter's going to be in New York. And damn it, Michael C. Hall. Because I do not want to be interested in this show. I know I'll watch it because it's Michael C. Hall and I would watch him do anything. But this show actually looks really interesting because the premise from the trailer, and if you don't want to know, you can skip ahead. But the premise from the trailer is that Dexter, of course, is alive and he didn't really die. And then Batista is there, and Batista knows now that he's a serial killer. And so Dexter escapes the hospital and goes to New York because you can hide out well in New York. And he meets Uma Thurman's character, which you're not quite sure what she does, but she introduces him to Peter Dinklage's character, who, what it sounds like from the trailer is he collects serial killers or he gathers serial killers together or something like that. But it sounds interesting. And you see a little bit of Harrison, Dexter's son. And one thing I'm not looking forward to, because it looks like they might be turning Harrison into another Dexter. And that was one thing I appreciated about Dexter New Blood, was when they didn't do that. And Harrison, you know, of course, spoilers for that, shot and he thought killed his father. And I liked the fact that it seemed like it was going to stop there and the violence and everything like that was going to stop. So I'm hoping they don't actually do that. But I'm just kind of annoyed because I didn't want to be interested in this as much as I am from watching that trailer. Plus the cast they're getting together. And I don't know, Peter Dinklage looks really great from the little snippet of him in the trailer. And so it's just like, I just cannot get away from Dexter. Dexter is just like going to be part of my life. And I was so happy with the way they wrapped it up. I know most people aren't, but I loved the way they wrapped it up last time. And so that's why I'm kind of like, really? But I'm still going to watch it. Like I said, it's Michael C. Hall. I'll watch anything he does. So we might end up doing like we have a thing, Ashleigh, where it's the Wild Women of Podcasting, where it's me, Jen, and Carla, and we used to do live stream reactions to Dexter. And so we might bring that back for this series. So, yeah.
Dexter's one where I never got on board the train because I looked like a lot of effort to get into as a show. And I don't really know what I mean by that. But in terms of seeing this and this new like adaptation and anything where they try and pull the thing of like, this guy is supposed to be dead, but he's actually alive and he comes back, is always a tricky dismount to land, because typically when you've killed off a character like that, especially one who was central to your show, it's usually because, you did that to kind of wrap things up and close it out. Some shows linger for a season or two past and they try and do it with a new cast, new characters, and it doesn't really, it's not the same. But Scrubs, when they moved on from it's like season 8 to 9 or something, and all of the main cast is gone. They're not dead, but they're just gone, and it's a new cast. And it's like, oh, okay, well, what are we still doing telling this story? If you bring them back, it's like, it feels a little bit like, oh, no, what? You liked them? Oh, shoot, we got to put them back in there just because we need to just keep this train rolling. It's a weird cast from what you've sort of said. Uma Thurman? I like Uma Thurman, but she's not getting a huge amount of work these days. So good that she is. But I don't know. Peter Dinklage? I loved him absolutely in Game of Thrones and a number of other things I've seen him in. But for me, he's kind of like a roller coaster for Peter Dinklage. It goes up and down in terms of his performances. Sometimes he's just phenomenal, and sometimes he's just really phoning it in. So, but yeah, I suppose we'll see if this lives up to the previous seasons of Dexter, because it was well regarded, when it was on, acclaimed show. So, yeah, so it was good.
Yeah, well, the original Dexter, and I still to this day maintain season 4 of the very original Dexter is the best season of television I've ever seen. And John Lithgow plays the scariest serial killer I have ever seen. Absolutely fantastic. And if you don't know, the way they're branching out and extending this Dexter franchise is they're making a Trinity Killer, which was the name of the serial killer that John Lithgow played. They're making an origin thing about him.
Okay.
And I don't know if we need that at all. In fact, I don't think we need that. I'll probably end up watching it.
Classic pitfall of these things. We need an origin for everything. We always need the prequel. And how did this come to be? Do we, though? Isn't it better that we kind of don't know everything about it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was the thing with when they decided to do Original Sin, which is watching Dexter as a teenager and also watching his father, Harry, who gave him the code that he lives by, and watching him grapple with that, and you see flashbacks and all of this stuff. And that was why I was like, why do we need this? We don't necessarily need to see that, because we got the horrible wig and everything on Michael C. Hall and some of the flashbacks in the original Dexter. So we don't necessarily need that. But I watched it to see. And like I said, most of it felt like a lot of people, because they had younger versions of a lot of characters that we had loved, like a lot of people playing Halloween dress up and just dressing up like these characters and kind of doing an impression of them. It didn't feel authentic. And I didn't really like the choices of the performance by the actor playing young Dexter, which, again, that's a very rough thing to do, very hard for any actor to step into those shoes. So I don't really fault him. I think it was a lot of the writing. But then, like I said, they revealed the big bad of the season, and they also did another thing. And I went, dang it, I really like that. And dang it, I think that's great. And I like the way they handle this. So then they got me, and that one's been renewed. So I'm sure I'll turn in for a second season. And the thing with Dexter, with the very, very original Dexter, is I've said, if it wasn't for the way the original Dexter ended, which is one of the worst in series finales ever, and how they the things they did in the last couple of seasons, that would have been my all-time favorite television show. And that's why I'm very trepidatious with anything with Dexter, because I know how great it can be, and then I know how absolutely horrible it can be.
Well, bad writing can torpedo even the best actors trying to give the hardest performances. I'm trying to think of some good examples, but we all know classic bad deliveries, or not bad deliveries, just bad writing.
Yeah, and I think that happened a lot on the original Dexter.
Yeah, well,
Sadly.
Game of Thrones, classically, actually, last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. Speaking of Peter Dinklage, guy who was able to deliver lines amazingly, but when you're given a line, and who has a better story than Brown the Broken? Sorry, Peter. No, man. It's not working for me.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm sure I will be talking about that when it premieres in July. So that's pretty soon. So I'm sure it'll come up, and I'll let everybody know if we're going to do live reactions. It depends on if Carla and Jen want to put themselves through it as well. So
Subject yourself to that. Well, perhaps not subject yourself, but we all, well, trust but verify, have a healthy skepticism of any renewal series.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about a new rendition of Shakespeare's classic, Twelfth Night, that I think is really cool and hopefully will be repeated in the future. So we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Summer tastes like Tic Tac. Tantalize your taste buds this sunny season with citrus adventure and orange. 2 everyday flavors that bring summer in every... Tic Tac Citrus Adventure is a yummy, vibrant medley of lemon, lime, and mandarin. And Tic Tac Orange is the perfect mix of tangy and sweet. Visit us at Tic Tac USA on social to refresh your summer with Tic Tac.
Okay, so recently Ian McKellen has announced that Sir Ian McKellen, is going to open an all trans and non-binary production of Shakespeare's classic Twelfth Night. And this, to me, I think is just such a great thing, especially right now and with the climate we're in, to have this happen and to announce it. And I think this is the perfect one of Shakespeare's plays to choose. A lot of people agree with that. And I just really, this made me very happy. I thought it was a great way the news came out before June 1st, of course, but I thought it was a great way to kind of kick off Pride Month as far as like good, positive news, which I think we need a lot more of that right now. So what are your thoughts on this, Ashleigh? And why do you think this is so important? And do you think this could lead to more representation?
Important, yes, particularly, and I'll give you some context, being British and being trans, about what this means to me specifically and to my community, not least because things for trans people in the UK at the minute are bad. They're not good. Both of our biggest political parties in the UK, pretty openly transphobic, as is the current Minister of Health. The Supreme Court of the UK delivered a ruling a couple of months back, which has been interpreted. The ruling said it's not supposed to be interpreted this way, but it was interpreted as basically saying that trans women aren't women, trans men aren't men. You are not allowed to use facilities outside of what you were assigned at birth. A number of major institutions, sporting institutions, British Transport Police have already got on board and said, we will treat trans women as men and trans men as women, and non-binary people, strictly speaking, don't exist. In terms of protections beyond certain interpretations of equality protections, things are bad at the minute for the trans community in the UK. It would be like, imagine if, for American listeners, if the Democrats' stance on trans rights was pretty similar to the Republican stance on trans rights, but they insisted, no, we want you to live lives of dignity and peace and happiness. We're not going to do anything to protect you, and you are going to be the first thing that we concede of as a wedge issue going into the next elections in a bit years' time. So things are bad at the minute. And I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer about it, but that's just the way that it is. So to have a prominent celebrity, and, Ian McKellen's gay. He's been big, queer rights supporter for decades, being so. But at least, in terms of like what British celebrities are sort of considered like, how would you say, national treasures, people like Stephen Fry, who is gay himself, but has been disappointingly bad on trans rights. He's he would say old-fashioned. And I'm not going to say he's like transphobic in the way that other certain litigious celebrities are, who I will not name for that reason. But, there are people, a lot of the time you get people from that generation who might even be gay, but it's the thing of like, a lot of sort of older gay men who kind of pull up the ladder in that way and are just not supportive allies in the ways that we need them to be now. So to have Ian McKellen come out and be like, yeah, we're going to do this with this, relatively small company, give them that big uplift, give them that big platform. We're doing Shakespeare, this is British, institutional culture right here. We're going to give that a new queer spin. To do all of that at this time, that's like, for me, it's crazy important. It's not going to be like huge in terms of like a blockbuster movie or whatever, but it's important now with the context of everything else that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think, and I appreciate that because your perspective on it too, just because, granted, we're listened to across the world, but the majority of our panelists are from the United States. So to hear a different perspective, because it's bad here too, as a lot of people know, it's really, really dangerous. But I do think it's important to realize that it's not just dangerous here, because we too often in the United States are caught up in our own bubble and don't look beyond ourselves. And we think, well, we have Trump and all these other people, and so that means that we are really badly off, and so let's just move to another country, and no other country has it as bad as we have it. And it's that whole mentality of what gets us in trouble in this country, I think, in the first place, of just basically thinking we are different than everybody else. So thank you for that. I really do think that is important. And yeah, it's very important that people in any realm of power or people that have a voice and have an audience that will listen to that voice, that they use that voice for change or to make some kind of impact. Because I know people love to say, stay out of politics if you're in the... And there's no way you can do that as a human being, I don't think. And I think if you have a platform, it is your responsibility, in my opinion, to use that platform to say something and to do something. And for it to be something positive like this, that is sending a message, especially when it is a dangerous time to send a message, which isn't to say you shouldn't. I mean, I'm saying you should, but for some people, it can feel very dangerous and like you aren't safe. And for a lot of people are not safe right now. And a lot of people's lives are in danger, actual danger. Telling people they cannot be who they are and telling them they basically don't exist. That's what you're telling people is so dangerous. And that is exactly how Nazis started. People really need to realize, if you go back and look at history, this is how a lot of that movement started. This is how Hitler started. This is how all of that. So you have to counteract that with moves like this. Because yes, it is theater, so it's not as big as a blockbuster film. But this means something. People are talking about it. And especially when you had something else in the news about another person and how they're using their money and their fortune and how it's the exact opposite of this. So to have this and to have this positive role model and to have someone, like you said, who is admired and who is thought of as, and I think even in this country too, we really, really admire him and, really love this actor. But to have that happen, and like you said, I think the generation thing too is important, means something. And so I really hope somehow, like everybody knows, I'm a pessimist, but I really, really hope that this actually leads to more stuff like this and more joy and more opportunities for this theater group too. That's the important thing too.
Oh, just so.
I mean, this is a huge opportunity.
It's a huge opportunity, at least because McKellen is such a big theatre luminary specifically, a Tony Award and 6 Olivier Awards. He is, or at least he considered himself for a long time to be principally a theatrical actor. Nowadays, most people would know him more for his movies, Lord of the Rings, X-Men, whatever. But, he is very prominent and has been for a very long time since the start of his career in the world of theatre. So it's not just a big endorsement in the sense that he's like a big Hollywood name. It's a big endorsement in the sense that this is a guy with serious, both thespian chops in terms of doing Shakespeare, but also just in terms of theatre in general. So it's a big boost in that sense as well, I think.
Yeah, very much so, yes. And I will be linking an article about this too, so that people can read that and we can celebrate this more, and hopefully we'll have more stuff like this happen. Like I said, I try not to be a pessimist. It's really hard right now. It's really hard, And, and like I said, we try to use our voice here too. We are a small little voice in a huge world, but I think it's important, especially right now. So thank you, Ashleigh, too, for being on and for giving us a different perspective as far as like outside of the United States perspective, because I don't think we really understand a lot. We're so wrapped up in our own little bubble. But it is dangerous what is happening. And I could see the Democrats in this country, because there already are some Democrats that I don't think are that great on trans rights. So I could really see them, turning a blind eye. And I think they do, to a lot of extent, do that. So it can very easily, it's already happening here. So Yeah. So we need to keep speaking out and keep celebrating this.
But I think you guys, you have an opportunity to avoid what's happened over here. We're notionally progressive political party. We have the Green Party as well here, but they're quite small. But the ones who were supposed to be the progressive ones have sort of decided to abandon that in favor of I don't know what. I was talking about it a couple of weeks ago on my show on Wizard, and I thought it was a failing strategy then, and I think it is now as well, to throw any group under the bus in that way, because you're going to run out of road at some point. You're going to run out of people to throw under the bus.
That is a great way to put it, because that is what's going to happen, is people just think it won't affect me, but it will affect you. And this does affect you. That's the thing, is this does affect you. So we need to remember that. But I love that. I love that. You're going to run out of road, because it's true. It's true. And people are going to wake up one day and realize what side of history they were on. So, be on the right side. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Pop Culture and Fandom News. And I want to thank you, Ashleigh, for joining me on this one. And if you want to just tell everybody about your show on Wizard Radio and where they can listen to it.
Sure. Well, you might have got a bit of flavor of it just then. I talk mostly about current affairs and international news on my show, Ashleigh Stiled Live on Wizard Radio, 9 p.m. British time on Wizard Radio. If you just go to the Listen Live section, it's just right up there at the top, online or terrestrial now as well. Actually, I believe we broadcast, so check us out.
I don't even know what terrestrial is, I have to say.
It's just like broadcast radio, so like not internet, like signal radio.
Oh, okay. And I'll put a link in the show notes for that as well, everybody, so you can find it quick and easy. Because like I said, we have people that listen all over the world, so thank you. And of course, I have to mention, because we talked about some horror movies, Fergie the dog, who loves watching horror movies. This is not a joke. She does. She loves to sit there and watch them intently. She also loves to watch true crime, and she loves Abbott Elementary. So those are her 3 must-watch shows as a dog. And you can follow her on TikTok and watch her at Schroeder and Fergs. That's SCHROEDERANDFERGS. It's long, but it's worth it. To find all of our past episodes, links to our Redbubble store, links to our Patreon, which for as little as $3 a month, you can get bonus content. You get episodes a day early. Sometimes you win prizes, all sorts of fun stuff. Head on over to our website. It's afandomthingpod.com to find the link for our Patreon. Just click on the Support Us tab, or you can also click the link in our show notes. And on Friday's episode, we are kicking off our celebration of Pride Month with a fun little episode where we are going to put together our own little playlist of essential LGBTQIA plus songs. And I know everyone's going to be yelling because there will be songs missing, but we got to at least limit it a little bit, or we will be recording for hours and hours and can't do that. We'll also be giving a shout out to listeners who submitted some fantastic songs as well. So until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, and Free Palestine.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.